Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Inspiring Thoughts podcast today. Delighted to have Jess Pressland with us, who's a CEO and expert trainer from JP Training. So, really welcome to be on board, Jess. Great to have you here.
Nice to be here, Steve.
Yeah, we had a chat off screen already, and I did compliment Jess on her dress about how summery it looked and how lovely and vibrant it looked. I think it's about 30 degrees outside, I think, at the moment. I think that's what we're thinking.
It is a hot one. It is a hot day.
Yeah, it certainly is. So Jess has been given questions in advance from today, which we do with all our listeners, so they can really kind of prepare and get that rich kind of advice and suggestions and share their life experiences. Jess and I already beforehand have had a good 20-minute conversation. I think it could have gone on for ages, but we kind of paused and said we better do the podcast now. So, Jess, would you just share with our listeners, tell us about your career history, how you got to where you are today from that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So, running my own training business, I have been doing this for some time. I know I don't look quite old enough, but I have been doing this for 20 years. And prior to that, I have come from a recruitment background and ended up kind of falling into training where I ran successful teams and delivered training for my teams. It was successful, so it got rolled out to the business, and I ended up becoming the trainer of various recruitment teams and realized kind of where my passion lay was within training. I decided that was where I wanted to be focusing my career. So I kind of got a mentor and started sort of self-taught, went on various training
Yeah.
courses and so forth. And then over the years, as I built a business and built a team and added lots of strings to my bow as far as sort of content is concerned. So I now specialize predominantly in management development training, presentation training, and I have a suite of personal development courses and have a fantastic team who support me. So that's what I've been doing over my career.
Yeah, fantastic. And isn't it rewarding? I think when you and I were talking off screen about that buzz when we see people develop and actually move forward in their careers, it's such a great, what I call gooey feeling, but it's wonderful, isn't it?
Absolutely, and for me, it's kind of why I do what I do. Is that I love. I think it's I'm a kind of a nurturer. As a mother, I think I'm a nurturer. So also being able to work with people where I can support them and get doing the best that they can do. I want people to be the best managers they can be, genuinely,
Yeah.
and listening to people around. What are their blocks, what prevents them, and also within organisations, why are things not happening, and supporting businesses strategically to then think, right, what can we do to ensure that we
Yeah.
can retain our talent. But yeah, enjoyment, find a job you love.
It is, isn't it? And I think it's a bit about getting out of bed in the morning and just getting that vibrancy, not having that Sunday night belly, getting up on a Monday and going, yeah, this is good. We can do some good stuff. I love it. It's such a great feeling, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's why I can tell because you talked about that Sunday night. I was just going to say exactly the same, and I think I've got two twins of 21, and I say to them, just find something you love because they know that I don't have those Sunday collywobble feelings.
Yeah.
I look forward to a Monday because I get excited about what the week's going to bring me and what's happening.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I think they see that, so they're like, okay, Mum, that's what we've got to find.
Yeah.
Find
It's good.
work will never
Yeah.
be that.
It's a great feeling. Yeah, and we're probably like the annoying ones, like, "Hello, how are you? Great to see you on a Monday." That rather than the doom and gloom. So yeah, fantastic. So,
I try
um,
to bring the jazz hands in on a Monday morning, but yeah.
yeah, I see. I go the other way. I go a bit more out there to go. Come on, let's see what we can get from people. So let's have a look at. So we're going to talk today about attracting talent in kind of in the modern workplace, and kind of really how do we look after people from that perspective. So, from your perspective and your kind of 20 years experience, how does a modern workforce look for you in 2024? What do you see as really good key attributes for a modern workforce?
I think it's quite simple now. I think that actually now it looks diverse, it
Yeah,
should do. It should look very diverse and it should look multi-generational. We're now in 2024, five generations that you can see in a workplace, and I think that's fantastic.
yeah, and I love the bit there about from a diverse point of view because I think a lot of people just think it's good to do. They don't understand about the real importance of diversity from a collaborative approach, creative ideas, etc. But also from a commercial point of view, that most businesses, from the statistics, prove that by having a diverse environment, it's usually 30% plus more profitable because there's creative ideas going on. Would you have
100%.
seen that from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think, and that's what you say. It's the kind of why we're looking diversity. What does it bring? The different
Yeah.
ideas different experiences, different values, and I think, and that comes together. I mean, that's why we need to create diversity in the workplace. It's about business success, but also nowadays that's what candidates are looking for. It's not just what businesses should be looking for because they're told to look for
Yeah.
it. You say it gives you so much as far as collaboration and creativity, as you've mentioned. Actually, that's what candidates are looking for. Move away from organisations where it can become cliquey. We want diverse
Yeah.
mix of people, and actually, that's what a candidate would now be looking for in 2024, as well as organisations.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because we talk to a lot of organisations about Gen Z, and actually what they're looking for. And I think there was a recent survey saying about the top 5 things, but Gen Z are looking for a good culture, progression. They're looking for enjoyment, those kind of things that come out from it, rather than in my generation of, do I get paid and I stay there for 20 odd years? And I think with the Gen Z population I think the maximum usually you'll get is about 3 years because of them moving around and kind of different perspectives, etc. So organisations have got to work hard for these colleagues, haven't they?
Well, they do, because actually what it means is if you're a multi-generational workforce, you need to have different employee value propositions. And
Yeah,
be able to attract your talent, you need to know that it's not a one size fits all, because as you say, the Gen Zs, they're looking for different things. Different generations want different things for a
yeah.
workplace, and an organization now needs to be looking at their proposition to be able to attract different generations into the workplace.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So fantastic. And when we're looking to bring kind of colleagues into the workplace, what would you say the key skills that people are looking for nowadays? What are key attributes that people are looking at going, these are the people we want?
Well, it's interesting around what people are looking for. What I would be recommending to people,
Yeah,
actually looking at your culture and your values and be looking for behaviors, as opposed to certain skills, because skills can be taught. And I think if you're wanting people to come and stay and
yeah,
grow business, you need to really be thinking about not just the what people will be doing, but how they're going to be doing it. So working with organizations to ensure that actually they're looking at a cultural value fit,
yeah.
and being able to draw those behaviors out of people to see that as a right person fit.
Yeah, and I love that around that behaviour point of view, because that's what, skills and that we can teach people, but actually that behavioural fit for the organisation. What energy do they bring? What views do they bring? That kind of that drive and passion. Some people you can't teach that. Whereas actually that's what we're looking for those colleagues to go, actually, rather than the traditional old fashioned way of let's try and catch them out, and whoever doesn't get caught out we take them on. This is
Yeah.
about actually, let's see if they can bring their A game and how can we work with them, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And business and organisations, what they should be doing is allowing to create an environment within an interview where actually they're allowing people to do their best. As you said,
Yeah,
you about people tripping people up. And I think, I hope those days are long gone. Sadly, I still hear lots of stories of bad practice. But what organisations should be wanting to do, and this links back to diversity piece, is
yeah,
thinking, what can we do to increase diversity? So, for example, now when you're trying to attract neurodiversity into an
yeah,
organisation, that actually are all wanting sort of social mobility in an organization. Things like providing interview questions in advance means that you're opening up those pools, because what you're doing is
yes,
when their people are at an interview, you want to reduce nerves, you want to reduce anxiety. So actually you're
yeah,
allowing people to do well. So whereas if you haven't shared the interview questions, someone who's neurodiverse may struggle
yeah,
more in the interview and therefore be discounted. Whereas if they'd had that exposure, it helps with diversity. So
yeah,
um, yeah, for me, look
yeah.
at values and share in advance.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, is it, Jess, where organisations, and I still see some organisations go, well, we won't share them, and I go, well, it's just about how good the person is on the day, you know. That's what you're looking for, and give everybody the opportunity, equity, to give the opportunity to go. Actually, we've given up the best, and you'll know, being a training provider, you can give anybody the training. It's who brings it to life in the training room. That's the key attribute of a trainer, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
anybody can have the information, the slides, whatever, but it's the person that brings it alive. That's what you need, isn't it?
And exactly that, and that's around the right behaviour, as you said. You can read the
Yeah,
content, but you won't be engaging and you won't be passionate. So it links back to those values. What are they looking for? And if
yeah,
someone's customer service orientated, what are those things that they're looking for? Working well in a team, those initiatives around being initiative, and so forth. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
yeah. No, fab. So where we kind of looking with organisations, um, what other kind of ways is there organizations can attract talent? So where would you see from the companies that you get to work with, how are they attracting that talent in?
Well, so they often sort of come to me wanting to know what they can do around this, and I think I mentioned the employee value proposition, and I
Yeah,
think it's demonstrating from an attraction point of view around your culture,
yeah,
and your values. Because if you're looking at what are people looking for, they're looking for a business where they've got the right culture fit. So to attract
yeah,
somebody, first of all, where are you going to market it? Well, 90% of applicants look and find positions on social media, and
yeah,
predominantly it's going to be LinkedIn from a professional point of view. So if you're not on social media for your recruitment, then you're going to be struggling with your candidates.
yeah,
And then you need to be making sure that you're demonstrating what are you offering as far as, the development of people, the
yeah,
culture of people, your values, that they can then see that
yeah,
actually, because companies need to realize it's a two-way process. It's not just
yeah.
for us to, yes, you want to attract them, but people need to realize that actually for them, they want to make a decision that that's the right business for them to work in as well.
Yeah, and I always remember with my wife many years ago saying to me, Steve, it's a two-way process, as you just said there, about actually the organisation finding out about the person, but the person finding out about the organisation. But it's incredibly important now around personal development. I'm seeing more and more people saying, and that's not about moving up the ladder, it's broadening their skill sets. I'm seeing more and more people saying, how can I want to do a good job, I like what I do, but how can I broaden it? How can I go across other departments, those kind of things? That's where I'm seeing more and more. It's not always linear, which is in my day was always linear away. Would that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think organisations need to realise that actually it is, and also not everybody wants it. Also, there's not an opportunity for everybody to be a manager. That's for one.
Yes,
There isn't the opportunity for everyone to be that manager, but also not everybody wants to be. So, what does development
yes,
look like? And it looks like so many things. So it's developing people to ensure that they stay top of their game, that they're able to have the skills and be able to do the best. And things change, so you
yeah,
need to keep people up to date. And how has the business changed? So what skills do they need now? How are we keeping them refreshed? So all of
yeah.
those are soft skills as well. So because some people go, oh, I've been here for ages. But actually, let's keep our skills up to date. Let's refresh because we can
Yeah.
always do something that little bit better.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because also if you took through, especially it's probably quickened up in recent years due to the pandemic, but people's skill sets 6 months, a year ago are now out of date.
Yeah,
So this is where some people, I had a colleague the other day say to me, I'm just happy I do what I do and I just turn up for work and that. And I said, okay, but how are you keeping your skills current and your
yeah,
capability up to date for the kind of, and they eventually got there, went, I'm not. And I said, well, people are going to overtake you.
yeah.
So actually, how can you do a really good job, but the skills you're going to have to keep moving?
Yeah, and it looks like, and now actually, we're lucky in a world now where, it isn't all about going on a training course. There are so many ways in which we can, we're doing a podcast now.
Yeah.
So how people can learn and take on information, and that's what I do. Yes, I can go on a training course, but I also read a lot, listen a lot,
Yes.
podcast, watching. So there's so much available. So for organisations, they need to be making it really clear to what are the skills that people need to
Yeah.
have, how they were going to be obtaining them and keeping them up to date, as you said. We don't want people being left behind.
No, and I love that bit there about we don't want people left behind. So, what does like the people in organisations like that employee journey start to look like for the future? What do you think the employee journey would look like?
I see the journey as five parts actually, so it's sort of quite a sort of like clear pathway. So the
Yeah.
first one we've mentioned was attraction. So
Yeah.
how are we attracting people, and that's really important to stay true to your brand
Yeah.
and making sure that if we have a culture that we're living to that through the attraction process. And I think some people neglect that. So when we're advertising the positions and when we're interviewing, you need to make sure that how we're dealing with candidates. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
If we say our culture is people first, how are we treating people in our recruitment process?
Yeah.
I hear day in, day out, because I'm a member of lots of communities, and people looking for work, and they get ghosted, they're not replied to. So if your
Yeah.
organization brand is we're people first, well, actually, they might not be right, but who do they know? And this is
Yeah.
your reputation in the marketplace. So they need to think about it from that attraction process. So
Yeah.
how are we demonstrating our values and our culture through our process? That's the
Yeah.
attraction, the first point. And then once we've attracted people and we've recruited them, we then have to onboard them. This is part
Yes.
two. So with the onboarding part, it's then, well, actually, how are we inducting them to ensure that they gain all the knowledge and the skills they need to do the job properly?
Yeah.
And how are we introducing them and integrating them into the business? And I'm shocked when I go to an organisation, and I had it quite recently, I won't name the corporate that
Yeah.
I was at, where somebody said, oh, there's a guy down there, I don't know who he is. And he's been here a few weeks, and I keep walking past him, and I was like, and you haven't said, hi,
Yeah.
I'm Jess, so
Yeah.
that saddens me that actually it's not just how you integrate somebody within your team, how do we integrate them within the business so everybody knows
Yes.
who one is. And I know it's a challenge with people who work remotely now and people who work hybridly, but actually organisations need to be thinking about that.
Yeah.
Where are we seeing people? How do we know what everyone does? The onboarding gives a really good indication to
Yeah.
candidates of how their career is going to look like. And then
Yeah.
the third part is then engagement. So they've been onboarded, they've been inducted. How are we going to engage them? And there's a few facets to this one. So the first one is
Yeah.
performance management.
Yeah.
An organisation needs to have a clear framework so that
Yeah.
people understand their expectations of what they should be doing, to what standard. It's kind of like setting direction, I call it,
Yeah.
set people on their merry way. But then they also need to have people, a manager who ensures that they're successful. So,
Yeah.
ongoing feedback, and coaching and so forth. So there's a performance management framework to allow people to be engaged. So they know what they've got to do and how they do
Yeah.
it. Then there's the continuous learning point of view that we sort of just touched upon. I'm
Yeah.
now working with an organisation, and it needs to be clear so that they understand that actually developing people, continuous learning, where does that come from? Does it
Yeah.
come from buddying up? Does it come from coaching? Does it
Yeah.
come from a secondment? All of the different ways in which that can happen. And then you've got the employee engagement. Now, our organisations carrying out surveys so they
Yeah.
understand what the engagement is and where are their barriers and what they need to do about it. And then also they've got to create that positive work environment. So all of those
Yeah.
things around team building, work-life balance, ensuring that they
Yeah.
have the culture. Because culture isn't what we say it is on a wall, it's how
Yeah.
people behave. So they need to create that to engage people.
Yeah.
So that's what you do once they've sort of been started. And then it's about retention. And why do people stay? Well, actually, it's probably to look at why people leave. People leave organisations now. 70% of people leave because they've got a bad manager. So I think an
Yeah.
organisation should have a really clear framework for upskilling their managers, because a manager has a huge responsibility
Yeah.
around motivating and inspiring people to be a leader, be a manager. Organisations to retain talent also need to ensure that they have. We've talked about development, that's one.
Yeah.
And another one is around the well-being. Well-being is a big piece, particularly for Gen Zs, but now for lots of other multi-generations, that actually they want an organisation that isn't just saying we care, but actually what are you doing? Are we having conversations about mental health? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Are we actually understanding our people? So conversations that happen all the time, and lots of initiatives need to be in place around general well-being. And then the final part is the transition. Now, people will either transition out of their role because they've been promoted, they might go sideways. Where are they going, and how is that happening
Yeah.
smoothly? Some organisations will have clear succession planning, and some people will leave the organisation. And that's okay if we're losing people for the right reasons, not because they've got
Yeah.
a bad manager and they're leaving, but if they're transitioning out, you want to manage that process well. So exit interviews, so we know why they're leaving, what can we learn from
Yeah.
it, but then also maintaining good relationships with people out into the marketplace, so that when we're networking, people know people, it can help
Yes.
us. And go back to the start where we're attracting talent, you want to be wishing people the best with their futures, not be
Yeah.
sending for the wrong reasons. So that's the process from attraction through to transition. And that's what I would say it looks like. And lots of organizations fall down in different stages of that journey.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. So there's loads of things. When you were talking, then I was just beaming to go. So think about when those colleagues first join us. In that office. If we haven't spoken to them for 2 or 3 weeks, come on, go and say hello. Come on, people we want to make embrace and feel good, isn't it? We've
Yeah,
worked hard, and I think through ACAS figures before. It's like I think it costs £26,000 per colleague new recruit get them to up a certain level. So that's not even productivity, that's to a certain level. So you spend all that time, all that money, not to say hello, how are you, from that perspective. I think the other thing that you touched on there, I'm an and our company is an enormous fan of performance management. enormous fan of it. That's not getting rid of people. That's keeping people in their swim lane and giving them guidance. And actually, where can you move and progress? And these are the metrics that we're working to, etc. So it helps people give that direction and clarity. Whereas I've seen too many organisations over probably the last 5 years move away to lack of performance management, and now we've got people running around like headless chickens, not really knowing where they're going or what they're doing. So just enormous fan of just giving that structure to give people about their own swim lane, what they're doing from that perspective. But I think the other bit there about how it flows about a continuous development, which we talked about, really making them feel good. And actually, quite a few organisations we get to work with, it's not all about pay and bonus and rewards. It's about how I feel, and that's the culture that comes through. Actually, I work here, and I get that reward, that nourishment that I need, rather than let's throw money at people, if that makes sense. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I completely echo.
Because once you've given it, then you just want it again, and so and then therefore it's not no longevity to that, because
Yeah,
we just want it again. So touching on what you said about the performance management, it's that clear framework. It's giving everybody
yeah,
this opportunity. So those touch points. What's a framework? I'm visual, so I see a circle.
yeah,
But a circle is a year, and within that year, what are your touch points? So it's how many reviews do you have in that
yeah,
year? They're quarterly or biannually or annually, and then how many catch-up chats do we have? Those are
yes,
those opportunities for you to have that time. But managers have to understand their responsibility. There has to be meaning behind them. It's not a tick box activity. It's
yeah,
making them worthwhile conversations to actually, because it's about achieving success. We don't just tell people what to do and then go, they haven't done it. The
yeah,
responsibility of a manager to ensure that actually we're going to support them in getting there.
yeah,
And so that motivational piece, the upskilling piece,
yeah,
that goes in there, and keeping
yeah,
it sure that also, because sometimes things change all the time. So
yeah.
what happened at the beginning of the year to the end of the next may not be relevant anymore. So yeah,
Yeah.
it makes a
Uh,
change.
And I think it goes back to, I think, which you touched on there, leaders have that enormous responsibility. It's an absolute privilege to be a leader, absolute privilege. And what comes with that privilege is the good times, but it's also the people times that come with it. So I'm yet again a big fan of that. We don't subcontract issues to HR to deal with. Leaders got to own that responsibility. HR are not there to be the judge and jury of stuff. They're there actually to advise and support and coach and develop and that kind of bit. So, and I think the other bit is where we see leaders that get into role, and I do feel sorry for them that they're suddenly one day a specialist in their field, and then they've got to now manage people, but there's no development path, there's no kind of training to support them, because we do know that people's feelings, perception, how they, sometimes people are hard to work out, but actually people need those skill sets as leaders. Otherwise, we're doing an injustice to them. I feel strongly about that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I hear it again day in day out. I hear it from an HR point of view when they basically feel like they're the parents of new
Yes.
managers. We're hand holding them, that we're dealing with things that they should be dealing themselves. But actually, sometimes I push it back to you and to them, and because they come to me with their woes and their, and I hear them
Yeah.
and they're very valid. Managers aren't dealing with challenging conversations. They're not managing
Yeah.
performance. But actually, I have to then say to them, well, have you given them the skills? Because but they have to build their confidence, their emotional
Yes.
intelligence to understand the impact they're having, and the skills and the knowledge. There's quite a few facets to that. And
Yeah.
then they're not, well, then you're almost setting them up to fail. Because
Correct.
what ends up happening is, as you say, as you just mentioned, is that the transition, you can be a great engineer. Does that make you a great manager? And
Yes.
therefore you can, very different skill sets. So actually the skills to be a great manager are different. So give them the skills, so that, because organizations need consistency for management. It shouldn't be, well, if I've
Yes.
got him or her, you're okay, but if you've got him or her, you're
Yes.
not. And managers need to be managed on managing other people,
Yeah.
well, which is really important to make sure they maintain a standard of their
Yeah.
management practices.
Yeah.
And actually, what does leadership look like in your organization, in day-to-day behaviors, living
Yeah.
your values, being a role model,
Yeah, and I think it's really, really important about role modeling. So I'm an enormous fan of Stephen Covey's Seven Habits, but in with that, the emotional bank account. So really, really important about how do you build those positive deposits into that relationship. Then when the difficult conversations come along, they become easier because you've earned that right to. So
Yeah,
I think it's so important for leaders rather than just see people, and I probably see about half a half that it's transactional, where I see the great leaders as it's both ways. I understand that person, I know what motivates them, I know how to talk to them, I understand their behavioral type, that there's more invested time in
yeah,
there rather than let's just get the job done. And that will only last for a certain period of time.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the questions which we threw kind of at you, Jess, was say if you were to go back 10 years, what advice would you give to yourself now about how to impress in the workplace or to develop? What advice would you give to yourself?
Oh, do you know that question made me laugh because I feel like I must be older than some of your other guests on your podcast because I feel like I have to go back a little bit further than 10 years. I'm going to have to go back 20. So I'm really sorry
Yeah,
about that. I'm going to go back 20.
yeah,
Yes, I am old enough. So if I was to go back 20 years ago, I think it would be about, for me, it's about being true to yourself and
yeah,
understanding that actually, because I've had a toxic manager. I don't work for him anymore.
yeah,
But I think at the time when I was younger, I think I felt really lucky to be in a job and I saw it differently. And I think so I was in a job thinking I was compromising myself in the
yeah,
values behaviors. And I think what I would tell myself is that you don't need to do that. And actually
yeah,
that to realize that don't feel trapped, don't feel that you have to compromise, that because actually there are so many wonderful organizations out there. And well, it's one of
yeah,
the reasons I work for myself because it gives me what I need. But actually there are other paths. And if one doesn't work out for you, there's plenty of others. And I think particularly
yeah.
now, people can change. So I think for me, it's don't settle, and you will find it.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice about you will find it. I mean, human beings have a knack of problem solving.
Yeah,
So we have that innate ability to really kind of problem solve. And I think that's probably echoed about if I go back at my career, actually experience. I think I give my advice is to go and experience different and new things. Go out there, see what you like, what you don't like, etc. And I think today's it's actually quite a small world. How you can get around from like planes, etc., trains, all that kind of stuff. Go and experience things.
yeah,
You'll find your way. And if you don't like it, don't like it. But at least
yeah.
you've experienced it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think actually now I think I'm quite happy that in 2024 people can change direction
Yeah,
and find. I just think find your happy place, find what makes you happy. You know, for some people it's not working in a corporate world. For some people it's
yeah,
working for a startup. For some people it's working, doing their own, being self-employed, whatever that may be, and or it's transitioning into a different role because they may have done engineering but want to do HR. Or I think we live in a world now where that is okay. Whereas I think when I was younger, it was almost like a little bit of a career for life. You did
yeah,
something and you were on one path and that's what you're going to do. I think that's what's quite refreshing now.
yes,
Actually, I think particularly for these Gen Zs, being a mother of Gen Zs,
yeah,
I know that they probably have several career paths in there because they're
correct.
working for longer. They're going to have
Yeah,
lots of different little different journeys, and I think that's really exciting for them because you can do
yeah,
a creative approach or go
yes.
down routes. I think they have there's more opportunities and more freedom now. I think that's really good.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic, and we often get asked about when we have guests on our podcast around what kind of are you working on at your personal development. So 2024, what are you working on for Jess for this year?
For Jess, what am I working on? Well, I'm a big upscaler, so I love learning. But for me, it's really important to keep myself up to date because obviously
Yeah,
current. So I always have to be kept up to date. So that's one thing, being kept up to date in all things retention, development, and
yeah,
attraction. So I have to keep up to date. So I read and watch a lot to do that. But also AI, and I'm sure this is not a new thing to you, but it is changing the workplace, and
yeah,
that's I'm learning how AI is affecting recruitment, how it's going to affect training.
yeah,
And that's a big piece for me. I've been going to events and listening to lots of stuff on AI so that I
yeah,
learn how it can benefit. I think you have to embrace it
yeah,
because rather than being scared of it, it's going to be there. So I need to see how it can support me, my business, my
yeah.
team, and embrace that, because as you say, I think 50% of the workforce are going to need to be trained in it. So I see myself as taking that responsibility to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, and I just echo that as well. I think to start off with, when AI was mentioned, I was maybe probably a tiny bit skeptic, but that's probably because of the unknown.
Yeah,
Whereas now, I've really thrown myself into AI. I love it.
yeah,
What a great world to be in. But you've got to immerse yourself in and learn it and embrace it. AI is not going away. So
no,
that's the bit where I kind of look at it, but it's what it can enable you to do. It's fantastic. So yeah, I'm literally singing from the same hymn sheet with you
yeah.
on that. So very exciting.
Some people are really scared and they think, oh, it's going to take away my job. It's like, no, you just have to learn how to use it. It'll make it, if it can save time, great. You'll just be doing different things and other
Yes.
things. So I think if people think, oh, I just don't want to get involved in that, I think, again, we talked earlier today, being left behind. So I don't want to be left behind. So I'm going to stay up to date and I want to utilize it. Anything that can save me time, I'm all over it.
Yeah, and that's the bit of like with me. I like to make. I used to say I was a time freak, but I think I'm just time efficient. I just like to use time to the utmost bit,
Yeah,
and if that's not my strength, then what can I find that can help me? And AI helps me a lot from that perspective. So it allows me to do all the good stuff that I love doing,
yeah,
rather than the stuff that I don't need to do. If that makes sense. So I
yeah.
think it plays to our strengths.
That's where I'm coming from too.
Yeah, fab. It's really good. So, um, Jess, we get often asked by our viewers and listeners, how can people reach out to you to connect? What's the best way to, talk to you a bit more or find out a bit more about JP training? What's the best way?
So I'm on LinkedIn as Jess Pressland, and I also have a website which is jptraining.org. So those are the two best ways. LinkedIn on my website.
Yeah, fab. And I would say you'll hear loads more from Jess as we kind of go throughout the rest of the year. And that, but Jess, can I just say thank you ever so much today? I've loved it. Time's flown by, and I think we could talk a lot more detail. I'm sure we will be talking a lot more detail as well. But can I just say thank you so much for being a guest today on our Inspiring Thoughts podcast? I think you've been a wonderful guest, so I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.